Hey everyone, welcome to today's video. We're going to be looking at a high elo game and breaking down how to use an early advantage to quickly snowball a game. In this video, we'll be looking at TF Blade, the #1 player on the North American ladder as he plays Aurelia. After picking up first blood before minions spawn, he's able to expertly navigate lane to quickly blow the game wide open by using several strategies. The key points of these strategies that we'll be taking a look at are posturing aggressively, using your power spikes, pushing your item advantage, and denying resources. By using the above strategies, you can turn any lead into a victory with ease. To kick this game off, TF Blade is moving with his team when they spot out several members of the enemy team. The circumstances of this fight aren't of importance. What is important, however, is how TF Blade uses the lead that he's just found by picking up first blood in his team's invade. The first thing that TF Blade does that is crucial to snowballing his lead is immediately recalling to spend his gold, allowing him to get an item advantage and subsequent power spike. By picking up first blood, he gets an additional 400 gold, which allows him to pick up a longsword. This is important because he's able to recall and get the item before minions spawn, meaning he doesn't miss out on anything. If he did not have the opportunity to recall, then he would not have been able to spend the gold, making the lead effectively useless until he was able to recall later on in the lane. Moving into the lane itself, the first strategy that Blade is going to employ is posturing aggressively. After getting to lane and clearing the enemy Alawi's tentacles, Aurelia begins to push up much more aggressively in the lane. Because he has a damage advantage from earlier, he is able to constantly jump forward to get in the enemy's face and pick up his own CS. This does two things that are very important to extending an early lead. First, it allows Blade to push his lane quickly. This is important because in this particular matchup, it allows you to get close to the enemy, giving you the chance to trade if you desire, and avoid some of the long-range harass from Alawi's tentacles. Second, by pushing up your lane quickly, you are able to level up before your opponent, giving you another huge opening to punish them and creating power spikes. Blade plays this beautifully, immediately jumping onto Alawi as soon as he hits level 2. This allows him to get off a free trade, take the enemy down below half health without losing anything of his own and pushing a huge advantage. Having this level advantage lets you get a minion lead, which puts you in an extremely strong spot in lane, allowing you to bully the enemy laner from getting last hits of their own by posturing aggressively. This brings us into the second strategy that Blade implements, denying the enemy resources. In this case, Blade uses his health advantage to posture aggressively, cutting off the enemy laner from the wave. He forces his opponent to choose between getting farm for himself or keeping his health. Whichever decision the enemy makes, there's a huge downside for him that puts Aurelia even farther ahead in this lane. Although the wave isn't in the perfect position to deny the enemy CS due to Alawi's ranged wave clear, Aurelia is able to consistently push, farming freely and allowing her to get level 3 well before his lane opponent. Crucially, Blade is able to use his power advantage to keep the wave pushed, putting huge amounts of pressure on not only the enemy laner, but also on the enemy jungler to come and assist his teammate. By doing this, Aurelia is able to tie up another member of the enemy team who is forced to path to him, allowing his other lanes to have a much easier time without having to worry about a gank. By fully shoving the lane under the tower, Aurelia continues to implement the strategy of denying the enemy resources. Because he is able to crash the waves, he makes it so that Alawi cannot guarantee all of her last hits between tower shots, further widening the gold gap between the two top laners. Additionally, he starts preparing to push his power spike. Because he senses an incoming gank, he drops a ward and continues to play aggressively. He's able to do this for two reasons. One, he is much stronger than his lane opponent, making him able to dominate any trades and potentially win a 1 vs 2 if he has a minion wave in his favor. And two, his jungler is nearby, meaning he can call for a 2v2 skirmish that he will most certainly win, snowballing him even further ahead. Despite being hit by Alawi's mark, Aurelia's earlier efforts allow him to maintain a pressure advantage, allowing him to buy time for his jungler to sneak behind the enemy and force a fight. There's one minor mistake here, however, that we should highlight before the action really kicks it up. Because he wants the enemy laner to push up and become vulnerable, Blade doesn't continue thinning the wave, allowing Alawi to push into him. Normally this would be okay, however, in doing so, the enemy laner hits level 4 before he does. Despite this, he still opts to force the skirmish and a gank. The slightly better play here would have been to continue pushing slowly and last hit another minion or two to even the levels before going in, leading to a much better skirmish. Here's where things get a little bit hectic. Despite being at a level disadvantage, Aurelia is able to pick up a kill in the initial 2 vs 2 skirmish and begin retreating to group with Zoe to fight another 2 members of the enemy team. It's important to note as well that this trade went in his favor because he got the kill on Alawi while the Alawi only got an assist onto his jungler. This exact situation is all too common when you're far ahead. The enemy team sees you as a threat and constantly pumps resources into your lane to shut you down. Moments like these are extremely important as they can make or break your lead. In this case, Blade is able to retreat and deal the maximum amount of damage to LeBlanc and Trundle before he falls, netting him another assist and allowing him to spend his gold and immediately return to lane. Because the action is ongoing and Blade has a huge item advantage, he immediately jumps onto the flashless Alawi after teleporting in. This is a perfect example of pushing your power spike and item advantages. After having just purchased, he knows he's at a power advantage, sporting a Tiamat and Ruby Crystal in comparison to the enemy laner's Sheen. This allows him to easily work with Zoe to pick up his third kill of the game. Perhaps the biggest mistake that players make when they have a huge lead like Blade does here is to let up on their pressure, providing openings for the enemy laner to mount a comeback. Aurelia does not make that mistake. Although he's built himself up a massive lead and all but shut out the enemy laner from the game, he continues to implement the strategies to ensure he can secure a victory. Instead of immediately recalling, Blade takes the time to push in the wave, knowing that Alawi no longer has teleport and will lose more minions to the tower. By continuing to deny the enemy resources, he makes it very difficult for Alawi to find a way back into this lane. Let's take a quick second here to take inventory over what Blade's aggression has achieved for him. As it stands, he's boasting a 3-1-1 scoreline with 20 more CS than his opponent does at the 5-minute mark. Additionally, he's been able to spend his hard-earned gold effectively. When Blade returns to lane, he will have a completed Phage and Tiamat, items with large offensive stats. This is in stark contrast to Alawi, who only has a Sheen that simply provides mana and a very minor increase in damage during short trades. Because of this, Aurelia will have no problem winning further fights and threatens to 2v1 the enemy top laner and jungler should he intervene. This is the ideal standing in lane, and by continuing to employ the key strategies we talked about earlier, Blade goes on to pick up several more kills, forcing an enemy surrender and closing the game out before the 20-minute mark. To briefly recap today's video, it's just as important to press an early lead as it is to acquire one. By using strategies that allow you to use your lead to the best of its potential, you can easily snowball a lane out of control, bringing your team a swift and convincing victory. Blade was able to pick up an early first blood and run away with it by posturing aggressively, using his power spikes, pushing his item advantage, and denying resources to the enemy laner. First, he started posturing aggressively in lane, allowing him to take favorable trade often, chunking down the enemy laner's health. Second, he began to deny the enemy resources, forcing Alawi off of last hits to further the gold gap. Then finally, he played extremely aggressively with a power spike and item advantage, picking up multiple kills for his team and shutting Alawi out of the game. By using all of these concepts in conjunction, Blade was able to capitalize on the enemy team's level 1 mistake to bring his team an extremely convincing victory. That's it for this video. Thank you very much for watching, and be sure to be on the lookout for additional videos that will help you level up your game and play just as good as the pros and the #1 player on the ladder.